Well, and evidently they weren't easy. I imagine the suppressor wasn't hard, but I know the scope required a screwdriver to take it off.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but I mean, it's one of those things. Probably a screwdriver, maybe even just a dime or a nickel, something like that. They're not hard to get off at all. It's not. Anybody could do it, and of course the suppressor just screws right on. When they're searching at the house, they went to the gun closet.
Cousins?
Yeah, the cousins did, and they found the silencer in the
Just
gun
right
closet.
there.
Yeah.
Right exactly where it would
Yeah,
be.
yeah, exactly.
Cool. Good
And
job, coppers.
Yeah, this is, and they keep calling this everywhere. They call it the gun cabinet, but really what it is, it's a small little stubby closet underneath the stairway.
stairs.
Underneath
Yeah,
the
it's
stairway.
the Harry Potter closet.
It is.
Yeah, exactly.
It totally is.
Yeah.
Yeah. So they noticed that it had red paint on it, and it was also sticky with a little bit of blood. So they called the police, and the police eventually came by and got it.
Like
3 days.
Took them 2 or 3 days later.
I thought it was 10.
3
No.
days later.
Okay, 3 days.
3 days later, they went and got it.
There was something else 10 days. Was it when they took photos? Official crime scene photo? There was something that happened.
There was something like that. It was.
Well, they had.
How long? How did it take that long?
Yeah, no, definitely no. They actually took crime scene photos like the day of.
But not great ones, right?
Yeah, but they were thorough enough to bring up one anomaly.
Really interesting
A
anomaly.
really interesting anomaly, yeah. So the family, the cousins, when they found this thing, they saw that paint. They went back to the farmhouse looking for the source of this red paint that was on the suppressor, and they found it in the kitchen where the big fight took place. So there's an August stove, like a big old, I don't know, oil stove, old-fashioned kind of stove, and there was a mantle over it that was painted red, and there were a bunch of scratches and gouges in this thing, and that paint did match the paint on the suppressor.
And
But-
wasn't there red paint like underneath it too that they matched to actually the nail polish color that was on Sheila's toes?
Well, yeah, they were looking for flecks of red paint in the crime scene photos because they thought Bamber's defense team hired an expert in photo analysis, and he was expecting to find flecks of red paint underneath where all this happened in the crime scene photos.
Right,
He did
like
not
he
see
would.
it.
Yeah.
He saw a fleck of something red, and he finally matched it to a chip in Sheila's toenail.
toe, yeah.
Her toenail polish.
Mhm.
Yeah. And
So a chunk of that came off.
yeah, apparently. So maybe there was a struggle. I don't know.
But the marks on the mantle weren't in the original crime scene photos, right?
They weren't visible in the original crime scene photos.
Which is crazy
Yeah, so that's
really suspicious.
that's a little suspicious, don't you think? Yeah. Yeah. Well, okay. Let's move on, and we'll talk about that some more later. After the funerals, they had a funeral for Neville in June, and then they had a separate funeral for Sheila and the kids. And then Jeremy Bamber went to Amsterdam. He tried to buy a large amount of drugs and offered to sell some nude photos of Sheila. Actually, what it really was, he actually didn't do that in Amsterdam. He was back in Britain, and he went to the Sun, which is a tabloid.
I was gonna guess it would be the Daily Mail, but yeah.
Yeah.
You had a good shot.
Close.
Yeah, no, he went to the Sun, and he said, "Hey, I got some. I don't know if they were totally naked pictures or just kind of revealing pictures or what they were, but the guys at the Sun thought it was kind of creepy and inappropriate.
Even the guys at the Sun
I know.
thought it was creepy and inappropriate.
I know, seriously. And so, I mean, this is like just not long at all, like after her death.
No.
And yeah, just weeks. Yeah. And he's offering to sell naked pictures over to the newspaper because he wants some cash. And so they just decided, well, screw him. And so they ran a front page story about how he had tried to sell naked pictures of his freshly dead sister to them.
Yeah,
Kind of
it's
embarrassing.
Not a great story.
No. Yeah. Oh, yeah. So anyway, after his little jaunt in Amsterdam, he was spending a lot of money because, well, surprisingly, he had all kinds of funds available to him
Yeah,
now.
he
that hadn't had
inherited
before.
like $500,000, right?
£500,000.
Half a
It
million
was
pounds.
like 436,000 pounds.
Pretty
it was
close.
it was a lot of money.
Yeah.
Well, then all of that wasn't cash money. This is assets.
Right, yeah, assets and all that stuff.
But
yeah.
Yeah.
No, he had
and
he had a big bankroll available.
I guess I just want to point that he went out and was partying and doing a lot of drugs and stuff like that. Frankly, if my whole family died in a really gruesome way and then I had a lot of money, I would be trying to escape reality whatever way I could.
Yeah, true
I would
that.
buy the most amount of drugs that I could possibly buy. I would Charlie Sheen that stuff. I would
Yeah.
go full Charlie Sheen. I would be snorting everything I possibly could, drinking everything I could, sleeping with whoever I could, just to get away from the reality.
Yeah,
And so I
yeah.
think it's just so dumb that people are like, well, he did go
No,
spend a lot of
it's-
money. It's like,
it's
well, yeah,
asinine.
what else are you gonna do?
Well,
It's asinine
Your
because
whole family was just murdered.
and everybody thinks it's okay. You go to a funeral and then afterwards everybody raises a drink to that person.
Mm-hmm.
That's totally okay. Well, in my family, we tend to raise more than one.
Oh,
Well,
yeah.
you too. We're Irish, yeah.
Well, and then, so you go. But yeah, you bring the great point of his extended family doesn't like him, and he probably doesn't like them very much. He doesn't now, at least.
Yeah, sure.
And so he's going to go grieve in the only way that he can figure out as a dumb 24-year-old guy.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's the other part we forget. He was
Well-
24 years old.
And yeah, and the other thing to remember is that it might very well be that he didn't like anybody in his family, and he wasn't that sorry to see him gone.
Yeah,
that doesn't
that's also
necessarily-
possible.
That doesn't make him a murderer.
That's
No.
true.
Yeah,
Makes him a big jerk, but
probably. I mean, yeah. And Jeremy, about a month after the murders, he screwed up big time. It was
whether guilty or not, he
Yeah,
screwed
yeah.
up big
Yeah.
time.
he screwed
No, he's
up.
guilty of this.
I think what I heard happen is he was with Julia, his girlfriend Julie Mugford,
And he'd been dating her for several years.
a couple 2 years,
Yeah.
and
She's the one that he called that night.
yeah,
That's
she
right.
did,
Right.
yeah. And he had apparently told her all kinds of details about what he did. Apparently, she was in the know about the murder, which to me is telling anybody. Supposedly she was. So anyway, apparently they were together. I think at his place, and he got a phone call from an ex-girlfriend, and then she overhears him making a date with his ex-girlfriend, and so she flew into a rage, threw some stuff at him, and it was kind of a little physical altercation. He dumped her, and which is a really stupid thing to do. It's really stupid to tell somebody all these details about the murder that you committed, and then dump her.
Yeah.
Really dumb.
Yeah. Well, she threw a bunch of stuff at him, and then he twisted her arm behind her to get her to stop.
Yep.
And then she stormed out.
Yeah.
And then wasn't it
4 days.
half the time I read that she went to the cops, and the other half the time I heard that they pulled her in for some stuff. She was.
Well, she had had troubles with the police.
Yeah.
Several other things. There was some theft. There was a bad.
There were a
bad
lot of
checks,
things. Yeah.
It was pot.
There was pot.
There was breaking and entering. There was
breaking,
pot, theft, and one other.
Yeah, and this is one of the things that kind of reduces her credibility. But she was the star prosecution witness in
Yeah.
Jeremy Bamber's trial, believe it or not.
So she told the cop something.
So she went to the police and changed her story because they had talked to her
of course.
about what happened and
They
everything.
had at least done that.
Yeah. So she goes to them and she tells them that actually Bamber said that he hated his parents. He said at one time what he really wanted to do was go over there for dinner and then drug them and sedate them and then come back a little later on when they're all passed out and burn the house down. That was one of apparently his fantasies. And we had talked about murdering them in other ways. She also said she saw Jeremy's mother's bike at his house.
James Bike.
No, it was June's bike.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that was a key part of the prosecution's case, was that he bicycled over there to murder everybody.
Yeah.
So he could leave his car there, and his car wouldn't be seen on the road. And she said that he phoned her. She said a lot of stuff. I'm not going to tell everything.
Yeah.
She really did.
She spun a tale.
Yeah, she did. She called him up that night, the night of the murders, and said, tonight or never. And then she said that she went to the farmhouse in the morning of August 7th after the murders because apparently Jeremy wanted to see her and have somebody that he knew to talk to.
Care about maybe.
Yeah, and
Presumably.
So the cops went and got her and brought her there, and supposedly he took her aside when they got there. According to her, she said, "quote I should have been an actor."
Yeah,
unquote.
he told her
Yeah.
that he should have been an actor. He was doing so well, or something. Like
Yeah. Although there was the same thing when she showed up. There was I saw an interview with one of the policemen who was there investigating at the time, and so they took them into the house, and they found a room that didn't have a corpse in it.
Which was hard to do.
Yeah, I know.
Wasn't easy.
Yeah. And they found a room that didn't have a corpse in it. They said, yeah, you guys can just go in there and pee together and yada yada. And then they shut the door, and the cop says he could swear that just as soon as that door shut, he heard a laugh. He said that. He wasn't sure. It was like, at the time, I thought he was saying, I thought, well, maybe it was a cough. But it was like, it sounded like a laugh.
Well, wasn't there some report of when Jeremy was at the funerals that he was kind of, oh, I'm really, really sad, and then, like, gave this huge smile to his cousins or something like that?
Yeah, it was his cousin. Yeah, they were in the car, and his cousin, David Boatflower, said that he was in the back seat, and he turned around and he gave him a huge grin just as soon as they were outside of the funeral. And he said his other cousin, I think it was his cousin, said, he did it, didn't he?
I don't know. Again, it's, one of those, just because he didn't like his family doesn't mean he killed them all.
Oh, absolutely not, yeah.
Especially the other thing to point out, I guess, is that in all of the stories, all the tellings that Julie has of all of his fantasies of killing his family, it was not very personal, right? It was like poison them and set the house on fire, not look them in the eye as I shoot them point blank 20 times, right? Not 20, that's an exaggeration, but in most of the things that he said, I think, we all read kind of the same stuff, and she said that he fantasized about killing them in multiple different ways, and I think every single one that I remember reading was poison and do something, or drug and burn the house down, or something. None of it was personal.
Yeah, he certainly didn't detail anything like, hey...
Intimate.
Intimate is the word I'm looking for.
Yeah,
absolutely.
And I don't know if she made this stuff up or not. Apparently one of her roommates also said that Jeremy hated his parents. I mean, he hates his parents. But again, the guy was 24 years old, and you tend to say and do kind of jerkish things at that age.
I said stuff like that all the time.
Yeah.
I say it about you two all the time. I mean, I can understand where he's coming from.
Yeah, me too.
I'm going to murder these two and start my own podcast.
I do. Every time I listen to the
I'm
edit.
going to murder you two and then do a podcast on just your murders.
Yeah, it'll be on Serial. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm gonna do my own podcast with blackjacks and hookers.
All right, so we know she's questionable.
Yeah, she is. She also said that Jeremy said that he hadn't done it, but that he had hired a plumber named Matthew McDonald to do it for £2,000.
Okay.
Which is a really, really bargain basement price for murdering 5 people.
Yeah.
It really is.
Yeah, I mean, and actually that guy turned out to have an alibi. Obviously, the police pulled him in. He had a good alibi. So
ironclad is what they say.
That's what they say.
And wasn't she granted immunity for like all of her crimes?
Oh yeah.
For her testimony.
Got out of a lot of trouble.
Yeah, that's another reason to question her reliability as a witness. Again, she's angry about being jilted. She did have a history of dishonesty. She's
motivated.
She's motivated by this agreement with the prosecutor.
Give testimony that they want to hear.
Yeah.
And then she doesn't have to go to jail.
Yeah. And so at this point, the police put him under surveillance. I'm talking about Jeremy. And they saw that he was selling off the family silver and antiques and stuff like that to raise cash and doing a lot of partying. And so at one point, he'd gone off to San Tropez for a vacation. When he came back and he got off the plane, they arrested him. And that was in September '85, about a month after the murders. And then a year later, the trial started. That's October '86. The prosecution's theory was that Jeremy left the farm about 10 p.m. and went back to his house, and then came back by bicycle in the wee hours of August 7th. He broke into the house to the bathroom window, which apparently, I think the latch was defective or broken, or it was...
He could use a knife.
He had a knife, yeah. You could use that to unlatch it. So he snuck in. Here's the problem that I have with this, is that if he snuck in and surprised everybody when they're asleep, what about the dog?
What do you mean, what about the dog?
The dog
knew him.
Well, the dog still would have barked some until the dog established who he was. The dog would hear him coming in.
If he was coming in through a window, dog would have barked.
I think so, yeah.
My parents' dog barks at me when I walk in the front door.
Yeah, but I have known plenty of dogs who sleep on the bed with their master, and something falls on the floor downstairs, and the dog doesn't budge.
Yeah, that's true. But this dog
just because they have a dog doesn't mean the dog is gonna go bananas.
That's true. Although the dog was doing a lot of barking later on. Of course, there were a bunch of corpses in the
Breakfast
house.
time.
Yeah.
But no, I mean, just because there's a dog doesn't mean that he couldn't. That the dog would have gone haywire when he came in. The dog may have walked into the hallway and he went, "Hey, Poochums, how's it going?" Oh, it's you. Okay, no big deal.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, don't you call your
You
dog
don't
Poochums?
have a dog.
I have 2 cats that think they're dogs.
We know.
Yeah, anyway, where are we at here? So I will try to reconstruct the whole crime thing. So assuming that Jared, this is just what the prosecution says. He got the rifle, went up and shot his parents. Neville runs downstairs. There's a fight. He finishes Neville off, goes up and shoots Sheila, and then shot the twins as they slept. Then he arranged the scene to incriminate Sheila, the Bible, and he put the silencer away because he figured out at this point in time that her arms were just not long enough for her to pull that trigger when the silencer was on the end of that gun. He also took the phone off the hook, went out the window, cycled home, and then called the police and said he'd gotten a phone call from his dad. The prosecution has argued that Bamber had not received a call from his father, and I don't know how they could really argue that. How can you say that he didn't receive a call? How do
Again,
you prove that?
you would think we're very spoiled in this day and age with phone records.
Oh yeah, I know.
And I don't know if they just weren't logged or what.
Well, I think also the argument was, right, that since Neville had been shot through the jaw in the bedroom and the phone that was off the hook was the one in the kitchen, the argument was that by the time he'd made it to the kitchen, there was no way that he could have made the phone call, and there was the assumption that that would have been the only time he was in the kitchen that evening when that was happening.
Yeah,
I think it's shoddy, but I think that was probably their argument.
I wouldn't assume that. I mean, that's what they do too. I don't assume that because I would think he made the. Again, if she's acting loony with a gun, that's when you pick up the phone. If she's already shooting, you don't go for the phone.
You have her gun.
You go for the shotgun.
That's the other thing that is, if Neville got shot several times and he called, and he calls his son, and I know that Jeremy said, well, or people said, well, he was the keep it in the family kind of guy, but I've just been shot 3 or 4 times, call an ambulance. Why didn't you call the ambulance yourself?
Well, that's it, and that's one of the things that they were saying too, is that why would he have called Jeremy instead of calling the police?
But he did call the police.
It appears there is evidence that he called the police.
But he would have said to the police, I've been shot 3 or 4 times, send an ambulance.
Oh, exactly.
Which is why I think it's reasonable to assume that he called before he got shot.
Yeah,
he did. Yeah, I think he called before the shooting started.
He did.
Yeah,
and
he
called, I think he likely called the cops, and then he called his son and said, you are 3 miles away and you've got a car. Come talk your sister down. Come help me.
Yeah, it's
Call
not.
the cops before you leave, so there's more people coming.
Yeah, it's
but
not
your
beyond the realm
sister's
of
gone
possibility.
crazy. Or he called his son first and said, hey, call the cops and get over here. Or just get over here if he did want to keep it in the family, right?
I don't think he told him to
And
call the
then
cops. He just said.
He just said, hey, your sister's gone crazy.
Need you over here right
Get
now.
over here, please.
Yeah.
The line goes dead because he said, he said what he needs to say, stiff upper lip, short and to the point. Line goes dead. He touches the receiver. I'm minding it.
Yeah.
Touches the receiver because I remember those phones, right? Dials 999, completes the call that was logged at the other spot, says, okay, there's these people, and then drops the phone and
knocked off the cradle during the struggle.
during the struggle, yeah.
Yeah, and
or the cops could have done. I mean,
yeah, no. Again, I there's no blood on the phone because the phone call was made before the shooting started. It has to be.
I agree with that.
Nobody tries to make
There
a
was
phone
a
call.
phone call made.
So I have one question for the police records of the calls. Did they traced the phone number that the call came from, or the caller identified where they were coming from?
Both.
Do you know?
Both times the caller identified.
When did? Oh yeah, so the caller gave their phone number. I think that's
I don't
what it
think
was.
there was. I don't even know if there was a phone number.
Okay.
No, there were phone numbers on both reports. I mean, the one that supposedly came from Neville had the address, the White House farm.
Well, he said, but
had
in the
his phone
statement,
number.
he said.
My reason for asking that is the timeline's weird, and the call to Jeremy is weird, and the whole thing doesn't really make a lot of sense to me. And So it made me start to wonder if maybe it wasn't Neville that called him, but if it wasn't his sister that called. Hey, I've killed Mom and Dad.
Oh,
I don't know what's
called-
going on. I've got some problems. So then he hangs up. He calls the cops saying he's Neville to get them to go over. And then 10 minutes later, it's like, crap, I'm going to call the cops again, but I can't be Dad this time, so I'll just be myself. Especially if they're not identified by a traced number.
Did they have photo, or